All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for attending this second class in a series of 5 that we're having about the Home Buyer Boot Camp. I am Dave Sullivan, and of course, I have a special guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Sierra Cologne.
We are both in the marketing department, but we are also both licensed realtors. Sierra has been a licensed realtor for about how long?
Since 2018, so what is it, 7 years?
I've been a realtor for about 10 years, actually. I got my appraiser license, my builder license. I had my real estate sales license, and I've bought 10 homes in Garden City and fixed them up, rented them for a while, and sold them. I bought and renovated 2 homes here in Orchard Lake, which is where I live now. We are happy to provide this information to you. Sierra recently bought her own home.
I did. I just bought a home in 2023, the end of 2023, and I was the realtor on that sale, and we've done a ton of renovations since. It's a pretty exciting game.
This part of the presentation, we're really going to talk about hunting for houses, right? We talked a little bit about the whole process last time, but this time we're really going to focus on what you should be looking for, where you should be looking, things that are important to you, and what are things that you could possibly improve on your own, things that you can fix and can't fix, and all that kind of stuff.
I like to call this the fun part of buying a house. All the other stuff is kind of just textbook, but this is actually the fun part. The house hunting, looking for what you actually want, figuring out what's a deal breaker, not a deal breaker. This is the fun part.
It's just like the house hunting show on HGTV, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. Anyway, this time we're at house hunting like a pro. We're going to get into that. Next week, we've got the mortgage process. We're going to have a mortgage lender on the line at that point, and then we're going to have home inspector and appraiser, and then a title company to handle closing day. Kind of taking you through the whole process of buying a home, and I think it's worthwhile. So when you think about a house, do you need a ranch? Do you need a 2-story home? Is that okay? A lot of times per square foot, a 2-story home is going to be a little bit cheaper, but a lot of people don't want to necessarily go up and down the stairs. You need to look at it. Do you want a finished basement? Do you want a crawl unfinished basement? Do you want a walkout or daylight basement? Basements really can give you a lot of extra living space. And if you have a daylight or a walkout basement, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're underground when you're down there. But it can be a big bonus space, especially if you have kids.
Yeah, I was just about to say that was a huge mistake I made when purchasing my home is growing up, I was always afraid of basements. So I was like, I don't want a basement. And then I bought a house and had a child, and I just kicked myself every day for not having a basement. Storage for a playroom for many reasons.
It certainly would be helpful to have a basement when you have kids. Florida, they don't have any basements down there. But up here in Michigan, we're pretty famous for basements. So it can be a cheap source of living space. And then you have to look at things that you can live with or things that you can't live with. And I think the most important thing you need to think about when you're talking about a deal breaker is the area. You really have to be comfortable with the area. You should really become an expert in an area. When I was buying homes to fix up and flip and rent, I became an expert in homes within a 1-mile radius in Garden City. So I knew exactly what the problems were with these types of homes and what to look for when I was looking at these homes, where they could leak, where things would normally give out, and if they've been replaced or not. I became an expert in the homes in this one area. And if you are thinking about buying a house, you should really do the same thing. Now, if it's close to where you live, it's a little bit easier. But if it's further away, you should still do as much research as you can about the area that you're going to try to move into. That's the one thing you can't change is the location. You can fix a house all up, but you can't move the house, right?
Oh, one more thing I want to throw in there about the creating a list when you're house hunting. Make sure every adult who is living in that house creates their own wants and needs list because your wants and needs could be different from your partner's and so on and so forth. I learned that as well.
That is an excellent point, Sarah.
Everyone has their preferences, and you'd be surprised what someone else could come up with.
If you ever watch the house hunting shows on HGTV, they'll be like, Sarah wants a house in the country and Bill wants a house in the
In the
city. And
city, yeah.
yeah, you're looking for an A-frame, but he wants an industrial side type house.
Yeah.
So
So everyone should create their own list and then as a
get on the
team.
same page.
Yeah.
It can save a lot of headaches and marriages probably too.
Like,
This is a pet peeve of mine where people go on Zillow and they say, "Oh, I just found out this house is for sale," and then it's already sold, or it's not on the market anymore for whatever reason. Zillow can be a good starting point for information, but you have to know that the data on Zillow is usually 30 to 60 days late, wouldn't you say?
and the numbers, let's not even get into how off the numbers themselves can be.
They
But
can be
like you
very
said,
far off.
it's a good starting point.
Yeah, it's good kind of get an idea, but the best place to go really, I think, is realtor.com. You get a little bit closer to active information, but when you work with a realtor, they have access to something called the multi-listing system, the MLS, which is how we all refer to it. And that's where realtors put their listings first, right? Usually they'll put them on the MLS first, and then you know that that home is either active, being shown. If it's not being shown, whether or not you can get in there, it'll give you accurate, mostly accurate information on the description. It is really the best place to go. And if you're working with a realtor, they can very easily put in what you prefer, and you can get an email every day, every week, every month for just that area that you're looking for of homes that meet your criteria that are actually on the market. And I use that tool all the time for myself. If I'm looking for a house that I want to buy and fix up, I'll put the area that I want, and then I don't have to worry about going to look. It comes to my email every day. So did you do that when you were looking for a home?
Yeah, I did. And I was gonna say, if you're aggressively looking too, like we're heading into buying season, so there are gonna be a ton of other people also shopping. Another thing that realtors can do is set up to get you an email every time a house hits the market. If you're aggressively looking, that's really what you want.
Right. So you don't even want to wait a day.
Right. You want it as soon as it hits the MLS.
You know, the market from 2020 till now was very aggressively what they call a seller's market, meaning the seller had more pull than the buyer, meaning that more buyers were chasing the sellers in 2020, especially. You know, homes were being put on the market and getting multiple offers above listing price. That
Mhm.
is a very tough market to try to buy a home in. Now I'd say we're coming back quite a bit from that, and there's actually very few homes on the market, but they're staying on the market a little bit longer. Would you say that's true, Sierra?
Yeah. It's kind of getting back to as normal as it could feel.
Yeah, I agree. It is getting back to normal. Now, there were some laws that changed for realtors, Sierra, and one of the things is in the past, the seller would always pay the commission for both the listing agent and the buying agent. But a law passed, correct? And now the listing person only pays the selling agent, and the buyer has to pay the buying agent. Have you ever run into this?
I have. I actually have done one transaction like that, just to kind of give everyone an idea of what it could look like. We had to write into, and I was the buyer's agent in this situation, so the listing agent was not required to split their commission with me. So my buyers, because I worked with them for so long, they were more than willing to cooperate with that. And we just basically wrote it into the contract and it got wrapped into their mortgage. Like it just got added on to the amount that
Sure.
they were borrowing. So it's not a dollar amount that has to come out of your pocket.
Yeah, but that's a pretty big change.
It's a
And
huge change. It's a huge change. And a lot of
yeah, it
people
really
are turned
is.
off when they hear that they have to now maybe pay their buyer's agent, because there are still some sellers and selling agents that do it.
And it's also open to negotiation. So when you make the offer, make sure you mention if you're working with a buyer's agent, make sure you say, hey, write in your commission that they pay your commission for me. And it's open to negotiation, just like every other part of the transaction. The best tools for your home search, working with a real estate agent, I agree. Some of the larger real estate companies in the area will get a very short window of time where they know about the listing before it goes on the MLS. Like it might be a day. And that might be all you need. But if you work with a good real estate agent who works with a group of other real estate agents, you might find out about those properties a little bit early. How would you, Sierra, if you didn't know anything about real estate, how would you select a realtor?
I always tell people the number one rule should be do not go with the first person that you talk to. Just because someone in your family or friend circle is a realtor does not necessarily mean that you have to work with them. What they say is that you should interview at least 3 agents, see what they can do for you, see how you vibe with them, and kind of make a decision from there. Because it's not impossible to get a real estate license, and a lot of people easily have theirs and they're in it for the wrong reasons. You just want to make sure that you are working with a realtor that works for you. You'd figure that out by interviewing more than one.
Yeah, I would say it's just like any vendor or any service person that you're going to hire, you should always get 3 bids, right? So if you're going to put a new roof on your house, you're going to get 3 bids. If you're going to get a new real estate agent, you're going to get 3 people to talk to. I think that's very reasonable. And not everybody has the personality to work with everybody. So you want to get somebody who you're comfortable with. How do you feel about open houses, attending open houses, Sierra?
I love attending open houses. I used to do it just for fun, just to kind of get out there and see what's coming. And that's honestly a great way to get in there and talk to the seller or the seller's agent to kind of ask some questions and see what's going on with the house. So I think they're helpful.
I think they're helpful too, because you get out into the neighborhood you're looking into. You
Mhm.
remember, so you're going to get your needs together. You're going to quantify them. You're going to find somewhere that you want to live, and then you're going to look for the neighborhood that kind of fits all those needs. And then
Mhm.
I would say if there's any open house in that subdivision, you should definitely go through and take a look because you get a feel for the neighborhood as well as the home and the homes in the area. 3D walkthroughs are good too. I actually sold a house once to a family who was in California. They never walked through the house. They only had virtual tours and they bought the house and then moved out here. So they can both be valuable, but anytime you can get out to the subdivision that you're looking in is a good thing to do.
Definitely.
All right, now we've got to talk a little bit about market conditions, right? Buyers versus sellers market. A buyer's market is when there's lots of homes for sale and they've been on the market for a while. A seller's market is that when they're getting multiple offers on the same day. We talked a little bit about what it was like in 2020 and now how it's kind of back to normal a little bit now. Now, the thing about the time of year when you buy, we're headed into spring. So a few more homes are going to come on the market and a lot more buyers are going to start looking at them. So it might get real competitive from now till August or October, September, maybe September, October. It'll start to slow
Yeah.
down again.
Usually
But
dies down about August, I'd say.
spring kind of is like the white hot time when people really feel like they want to find a new home. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and it's when people want to sell their home too. So
Yeah.
go back
But
and forth, but it's usually gonna be
yeah,
the seller's
it
market.
is. And we're going to have some stats coming up, but now really is the time that you want to get all your ducks prepared and get ready to put in a quality offer. You want to put in an offer that's going to be accepted over other offers because you might get in a situation where you have multiple bids in. How do you feel about putting a deadline on an offer, Sierra? When you make an offer, do you want to say, oh, look, this offer is only good for the next
Yeah.
2 days or?
Truthfully, I've always written an offer with a deadline because I think it kind of makes the seller feel like they need to act sooner. If it were if I had talked to the seller's agent beforehand and heard that there were a ton of other interest and offers actually coming in, then maybe it's negotiable. But if you want to get a deal done, usually you want to put a timeline on it.
And how the process normally goes is the realtor will talk to a family, usually over the weekend or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They'll come in, make the presentation, and they'll get the listing. Then on Monday, they'll go back and they'll have it at the real estate place and they'll put it into the MLS. And then on Tuesday, it comes out. Now on if they're doing it very quick on that Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, they might have an open house. So you've got a little bit of a window there. If you're watching closely and homes are coming up on the market and you want to be first in, then you need to watch Tuesday, Wednesday, really are the two most important days, maybe Thursday, but you need to see the properties that are getting listed on the MLS so that you can go and try and lock them up before the open house. You don't want to have really, you want to get there before the open house, because when they have an open house, a ton of people come through. And then you're going to feel like, well, I got to put in a bigger offer, whatever. When I helped my daughter buy her house, that same exact situation, they actually dropped the price on Monday. We locked the deal down by Friday, and then they didn't have the open house. So I'm telling you that works, and you want to pay close attention early in the week, because that's when the realtor is normally going to enter the data into the MLS. Okay, let's talk about days on the market. So if somebody lists their home today, and then 1 week from now, that would be 7 days on the market, right? If that home is listed more than 2 weeks and it's still there, you've got to start to wonder, is it overpriced? Or is there something with the home that doesn't come through in the pictures, but when people get there, they're not making an offer? 2 weeks is about what I would say. What do you think, Sierra?
Yeah, 2 weeks, definitely.
So if it's on there for more than 2 weeks, you might have more flexibility in the offer, right? They might be more likely to take a lower offer. Now, the longer that goes out, the more flexible they could be, or they might just be set on a number and they're not going to take less.
Yeah.
When you have a house on the market for 5 months,
To me personally, it would be a red flag, but like you said, there are some very stubborn sellers that will not budge on price. So it could be either or.
yeah, I think it could be. And you have to really look closely at those homes that have been on there for so long, because sometimes they'll have an offer and then the people will back out.
Yep.
And that usually means the inspector found something that they didn't like or didn't want to have to fix. Once that inspector finds something, though, they many times have to get that thing repaired. So the homeowner might list a home and not know about the repair, and inspector finds it. Now the home seller has to disclose that. It can change the perception of the home and how people feel about putting a bid in on it. Why don't you talk a little bit about a comparative market analysis?
So that's going to be when your realtor can go in the MLS and pull houses in the area that are similar to what you were looking at. So typically we like to look within the smallest radius we can possibly get. So we start with a 1/4 mile of a radius, and we're going to try to pull anything that's sold within the last year and see how it relates to the house that you are currently looking at. And that's how we're going to come up with a price that would be a strong offer.
Right. So you're really looking for comparable homes in the area that are similar to the subject property and trying to get an idea of value. Like if one home has a 2-car garage, one home has a 1-car garage, what would the value of that additional car be? And then you subtract that to try to get closer to where you think the property would be. And normally you do one of those for a seller. All right. Now this information is from yesterday. It is from the MLS, and that is the days on market for homes in Metro Detroit and how long they're on. So you can see the way it flows, right? You've got January, February is kind of the peak, and then it comes down in March, April, May, right? Now, what that means is homes are on the market less time. So it's a more competitive environment at that time. And then June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. That's kind of the flow, and that's pretty common, right? You see that in Michigan all the time. That's how it flows. So when do you want to buy a house, Sierra?
The golden time to buy a
When?
house is around the holiday season.
That's right. The golden time to buy a house is in between Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Because
right?
nobody wants to move during that time. So the people that are selling have to.
right? And nobody's looking, right?
Hmm.
Because they're involved with their and Christmas shopping and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's the golden time. But again, you can have the golden time during each week. So each week of these different months of the year, there's a golden time. It's Tuesday and Wednesday when you look for those things to come out. But just know that you're coming into the highest competitive time. You want to be the sharpest buyer you can be. You want to have all of your mortgage wrapped up. You want to have your down payment ready to go. And you're ready to make an offer because you need to beat out the other offers. But
There are a couple in there right now. They're not necessarily questions. They're a few of you have told us what you're looking for in purchasing a home, which is great. But like we said in a couple slides back, having that one-on-one conversation with the realtor is going to be your best bet. And like Dave said, you want to talk to multiple.
so in a seller's market, right, you want to be prepared to move quickly. We talked about that already. You want to get, one thing that people do is they waive contingencies. I would never tell you though to waive an inspection addendum. You always should have an inspection and never waive that addendum. Now, if you really like the house, you can have an appraisal waiver, but again, I don't recommend that in this market, especially if it's your first home. What that means is if the appraisal comes in low, so you buy a house for 100, the appraisal comes in at 90. Well, you've got to pay cash to buy that house, the difference, because the mortgage is not going to be based on 100 at that point. It's going to be based at 90. So if you really want that house, you really want it, then you could come up with the additional 10, and that would be an appraisal waiver, right? So usually in the higher end homes, they'll have that, not necessarily in the first time home buyer. A buyer's market, which is like what we have over the winter months normally, you have more time and more room to negotiate.
Dave, we do have one question that just came in. She asked, can you get a loan and buy a home if you're in foreclosure? I think we touched on this a little bit in the last class, but if you want to readdress it really
If
quick.
they had a foreclosure or if they're in a foreclosure. If
Sharonda,
they,
can you clarify that if you're talking about if you want to buy a foreclosed home or if you're asking if someone is currently in foreclosure themselves?
well, I'll answer both of them. So if
Okay.
you're in foreclosure right now, probably not be able to get a mortgage unless you, yeah, it really depends on your credit score and your income. If you are somehow in foreclosure, normally you're going through a lot at that point. There are private money lenders that will lend you money to get you out of foreclosure, but usually they charge you a lot of money in interest. So if you're if you're being foreclosed on and you really want to keep the house, if you Google private money lender, expect to pay an enormous amount of interest. And it's not what I would recommend, but if you really wanted to keep the house, you could get a private money lender that would pull you out of foreclosure, and then you would have to make the payments to them. Now, if you've had a foreclosure, I think it's still 2 to 3 years that you have to wait, but we're going to let the mortgage people answer that question next week. As long as you get your credit report back up, meaning that you have one good account where you've been making the payments on time, and maybe you have a car loan and you've always been on time on those payments, and your credit score is starting to come back up, then you could probably qualify for a conventional mortgage at some point. It might not be the very best rate, but it'd be a conventional mortgage, which will be very close to what a grade A person would get.
Do you maybe want to answer if she meant to, if you can get a mortgage to buy a home that's in foreclosure?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can
That's
get, that's
interesting.
just like a regular sale, but know that the seller is under distress, right? So you can make a better offer from your perspective to get that home because they are, at some point that house is going to go to the bank. So they would rather sell it and get a little bit of money than have the whole thing go to the bank and then it goes into auction at the county, or depending if it owes back taxes on the property. But yes, buying out of foreclosure is a great thing to do. Now, I bought many of the homes I bought in Garden City were foreclosed on already. Homes, I bought them from the bank. So you can buy
Get a
them after
mortgage to
they've
do
been
that,
foreclosed.
or is
Pardon
that
me?
usually a cash deal?
Well, usually I pay cash for those.
Could
Yeah,
you get a mortgage if needed to buy one of
you
those?
could,
Okay.
but part of my strategy was I offered cash so they'd do it, they'd be able to do it quicker. And then they'd accept a better, lower price, basically,
Mhm.
because I was not a mortgage borrower.
You know what they
But
say, cash is
you don't
king.
necessarily need to pay cash.
Okay, one more question. It says, is it true property taxes can be exempt from your mortgage and what program allows this benefit?
I don't think you're going to get away with not paying your property taxes. So you can have it in an escrow, meaning that you can have it every month you make your mortgage payment, and that includes the property taxes. And when the bill comes due, it's paid out of an account that you've have that money saved, kind of saved up in for you.
Mhm.
You can have no escrow, which means that you pay your taxes, property taxes on your own when they come due. So I'm not aware of any way to exempt your taxes on a single family residence unless you're a church. I think churches can have no property tax. And I actually had a neighbor once who ran a church out of his house, and I'm not sure if he paid property taxes or not. But if you have a church, I don't believe you pay property taxes. But consult your attorney on that. I should have said too, one at the beginning, one of the things I like about working at People Driven Credit Union is the fact that they allow me to have my own opinions. And all of the opinions in this presentation are really mine and not the credit unions. You should check with professionals on anything that we say here. And this is really just a starting point for you to start your home journey, home buying journey. So don't hold me personally responsible for anything that's in here or the credit union. So
Or
what to
CDL.
bring? Well, you should bring a tape measure, right? A checklist. So you check everything out, a notepad and a phone for pictures. Definitely take pictures when you're walking through a home. Because when you leave, you'll forget. And then when you see 4 or 5 houses, you're like, wait, what was that one or this one? So take pictures, bring a tape measure, what to look for, look at the layout, the condition, if there's natural light. One thing I'll tell you is I like natural light. So you want to make sure the southern exposure of the house has windows. I've looked at homes before and southern exposure, there were no windows on that side of the house. So it was a very dark house all the time. So you really want to make sure that you have southern exposure and, west, east. So it kind of moves around with all the windows. That's how I like it. If you like dark houses, look for the opposite. But look at how the windows are facing and think about how that light's going to come through the house. Storage, a lot of homes have attic storage. You want to look at how do you get up there? Do you have to put a ladder in there? Is there a pull down ladder? Is there a basement? Is there a garage with enough room to store things? We accumulate a lot of things, and while I'll sell most of those things on Marketplace, most people like to keep them. What are red flags for a property when you're looking at it? Foundation cracks, absolutely. So if it's a block basement, you're looking for a crack in between the mortar and the brick, right? Now, a little crack, not the end of the world, but bigger cracks are going to be a problem. You might see that outside too on the bricks that are laid on the house if it's a brick house. If there's cracks in the mortar, the house is settling. Now, a little bit of settling happens to all the houses, right? But when you start to get bigger cracks or if it bows, if the cement wall in the basement has a curve to it, you're going to have foundation problems and they get very expensive. In fact, foundation problems are probably the number one thing to be concerned about when you buy a home. Water damage, very important. Check the ceilings for any drip stains or drip marks. Basement too, you want to check for any water damage down there, like flooding. A lot of homes in Metro Detroit flooded, especially in Royal Oak there for a while. So you definitely want to check that out. You want to check out the fuse box. You want to check to see if they're all updated fuses. You don't want any screw in fuses in there. The heating and cooling system, you want to make sure that's up to date. That can get very expensive. The age of the roof, you want to look at all those things, right? And that's really what your inspector, you're paying him to do. But you want to look at all those things.
And when I was looking at houses, I would always bring someone with me that, because I don't know the first thing about what to look for in a basement. So I would either bring my dad or one of his inspectors and make sure that like it just kind of gives you like a first opinion before you make any ideas about putting in an offer.
Dads are great people if they're available to inspect that kind of stuff. But anybody, brother, cousin, anybody that could take a look at it is definitely something you'd want to do. Questions to ask your realtor to inquire about. How long has the home been on the market? We talked about that. Have there been any offers? Right? Did the offers fall through? Why did they fall through? What's included in the sale? Now, sometimes you can have appliances that are built in are normally included, right? Built-in microwave are included, dishwasher included, but the fridge, not so much. Now, if you want that fridge, or you don't have to buy a fridge because appliances are very expensive, you might want to say, hey, leave the fridge. I'd like you to leave the fridge in this sale. Everything is negotiable, but you need to think about that. But anything attached to the structure stays with the structure, right? Anything that's detachable or easily movable is personal property, and you need to include that in the offer if you want to keep it. Are there any known issues with the property? Is a good question. Again, if that house was in contract and then fell out of contract because of an inspection, they would have to disclose that to you. What renovations were made and when? That's very important. How old is the roof? Would be probably the number one question. Back in 2008, 9, 10, you could get a roof for $5,000. I bet you that same roof today is 20, 25. So roofs have become very expensive, and I don't think they're going down anytime soon. Assessments or HOA fees, like sometimes if they pave the road, they'll put an assessment on the property, and then every year, or like, let's say it was $5,000, your portion of paving the road is $5,000. Well, they kind of give you a loan, and then you make payments on that. So you can negotiate that assessment to be paid in full when you take possession of the property, or they can leave it in place, but you need to know what's there. Same for HOA fees. Now, a lot of times a condo will have HOA fees, and a subdivision won't have them. They're not as common in the subdivision, but if you have like a park that you're all part of the HOA, there might be a fee there too. When you have a buyer's agent, that person then starts to work for you. If you don't have a buyer's agent, even though that agent might help you write the offer and then present the offer, they're not really working for you unless you have a buyer's agent agreement, because that agent is working for the seller. A lot of people don't understand that. If you don't have a buyer's agent agreement, that agent's working for the seller, and they're going to write the offer for the seller on the seller's behalf, right? When you have a buyer's agent, that guy's on your team. Now, a lot of times agents will want you to sign a buyer's agent agreement. I'm not a big fan of those either. If you do sign one, I would say, I'll sign one, but it's only good for a month. I wouldn't sign a 6-month buyer's agent agreement. There's no reason to wrap yourself up into an agreement for that long. And communication, collaboration. They've been through the process. If I was a first-time home buyer, I would never approach the listing agent and tell them that they could write the offer. I would always get a buyer's agent, just because you need that individual on your side in the transaction. So average home prices in Michigan, I found this very interesting, actually. The original sale price is in green, this actual sale price. So the original listing price, green, sale price, blue. So what you can see there is usually you'd have a house listed for 150 and it might sell for 148, right? So green is the original price. The sale price is lower. So when there's a gap, right, it's a buyer's market, right? Because they've got to come down. When it goes over that, it's a seller's market. But you see the difference there. You list it for the green, it sells for the blue.
Hey Dave, really quick, Katrina asked if properties are being built with sub pumps. There's a certain law about that, isn't there now?
Yeah, homes now are required to have a sump pump. The house that I'm in now was built in the 50s. It does not have a sump pump. But homes now, when you pour a basement, you've got that bucket with a pump in there and you have to have a sump pump, correct?
That's just with the new build houses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
In the older houses, you might see them if someone added it themselves, which then to me may be a red flag because that tells me maybe they had a flood in that basement.
exactly right. Now, when they put in a sump pump, normally they have to put whipping tile around the outside of the foundation, which is like a pipe with pea gravel around it. So the water flows into the pipe and then it goes into that sump pump and then it gets pumped back outside the house. So active number of listings, as you can see, it goes up and down depending on the summer time of year. Winter's lower, summer's higher. Um, the more listings that are on there, the more of a buyer's market it is. But days on market will tell you something as well. But just know that we're approaching the time where we should see more homes on the market. Now, one thing that's kind of changing the dynamic though is that so many people got a 3% mortgage that those people aren't as likely to move because if they give up that 3% mortgage, they're going to pay 6% on the next property. So I think it's really dragging the new listings down because people are more likely to stay in their property. Don't you think that's true, Sierra?
Absolutely. I have a ton of friends who want to move right now because they started families and need bigger houses, but they are just attached to someone that I know had like a 2.5, a 2.8 interest rate, so I can't even blame them for wanting to stay put. But
Yeah, their payment could double without really getting much more of a house.
yeah,
So you're almost better off
making it
renovating
work.
if you can.
Hmm.
And that's another good point. So when you're looking for a house, even though it might be something you can compromise on, let's say the house is not as big as you like it, but there's an opportunity to put on an addition for a family room. Or
Hmm.
maybe there's some way to get an extra bedroom, convert a garage or an attic into a bedroom. That's something you should look for too, because it can give you some upside potential on a property. So let's say you found the house that you have to have, that you can't live without. So you want to submit that offer. You want to have your realtor, your buyer's agent realtor write up the offer. You want to have it as competitive as you can have it. I would hate for people to lose out on a house for $3,000. Okay. If it's listed for 250 and you know other people are bidding on it and you bid 253 and you get it, you're happy. If you bid 250 and you know other people are bidding on it and they bid 251, you'd be pretty disappointed, right? So a lot of times the listing realtor will say, I need your highest and best offer. That means they're getting multiple offers and people are either at or above listing price. So just make it your best offer, and 3 grand more on your mortgage is not going to be that much more money. 10 grand more on your 30-year mortgage is going to be maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks more a month. It'd be well worth it for the house that you want. Contingencies, you want to keep that home inspection, appraisal, financing. If something were to happen with your job situation, you want to be able to get your earnest money deposit back. You need to keep the contingencies in there for financing, appraisal, and home inspection. Earnest money is usually a down payment. Sometimes it's $1,000. Sometimes it's $2,000. Some people think like, well, if I give them 5,000 for my deposit, maybe they'll be more likely to take my offer because I'm making a better gesture with my down payment. Nah, just put down $1,000. It's not worth it to have that other money. Plus, if something weird happens, it goes sideways, and you got to fight to get 5 grand back rather than 1,000. So just
And that earnest money does go towards, is it closing costs?
uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's not like you're just throwing them $1,000. You're
Right. Yeah,
showing that you're
no.
serious and then that money gets put
Yeah,
with
it's your
you to close
deposit.
people.
So we had a cool kind of home comparison worksheet that you can get by holding your phone up to the scanned thing here and it'll come up. It's from GreenPath, one of our great partners, and If you feel like your credit is not quite where it needs to be, we do work with GreenPath. They will talk to you and have an initial free consultation about where your credit is and what you can do to improve it. They have a lot of great programs, and it's a great partner of ours. I recommend if you feel like your credit's not where it needs to be, you can talk to them and they'll kind of walk you through that. The biggest thing that I've ever regretted when I bought a house was the area. The area is the most important thing. Make sure you find the right area for you. And even if you don't think you can afford that area, become an expert in that area because you never know what's going to happen. You know, look for the house that's run down. The worst house in that subdivision is the one that you want. So when you're looking through houses, look at the other houses in the sub and you're looking for the one that's absolutely the worst. Because if you buy that one, put a little bit of elbow grease in it, you're more likely to have a positive outcome.
I was just gonna say, I am throwing in the chat right now the link to sign up for the next 3 classes. Next week's class, we're gonna go over mortgages, and I know that that's probably gonna be where you guys have the most questions, so try to attend that one for sure. The week after, we are going to be talking with an inspector about things that you should really look for, basically going into a deeper dive of what we went over today. They just have way more knowledge they can share with you. And then the last day is going to be about closing day and how to maintain your house afterwards. So we have a lot of great information coming in the next couple weeks. So make sure you guys sign up. I said there's one question that just came in.
Oh, okay.
Can you buy a home with an eviction history?
With an eviction?
Yeah, a history of eviction.
Sure. Well, I mean, yes, you can. Again, it comes back to your income, your credit rating, and your down payment. So whatever has happened to you in the past from a negative standpoint, you should always remember that eventually this stuff is going to fall off. So 5 to 7 years, all of that information should be removed from your credit report. And the further back that it goes, so the further it goes back in time, every month that goes by, your credit score will improve. So don't let something bad that's happened in the past make you feel like you can't do anything. Just get one good credit card from a credit union like People Driven. Pay that thing on time every time, even if it's a small credit card. Get an installment loan and then make those payments and pay those things back on time. And before you know it, you'll have a great credit score again. So don't let negative things that have happened in the past make you feel like you can't qualify, because more than likely you can. Go to annualcreditreport.com to get a free copy of your credit report, review it, make sure everything's accurate. You can go on our app and get a copy of what your credit score looks like. It's a great app. There's also, you can also do a what if scenario on our app with your credit score, and that's free to all of our members. If you haven't done that yet, you should definitely do that. If you want to watch the previous class or the future classes, you can go to our website and look for Real Estate Boot Camp, and we can watch the videos there as well. Sierra, thanks for putting this all together. I appreciate it, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.